The anomaly among stars. The crystalline spires of Icaliadenia gleamed against the backdrop of twin purple suns, casting prismatic shadows across its sprawling campus. For millennia, the most brilliant minds from across 17 galaxies had converged at this prestigious institution, sharing knowledge and advancing the collective intelligence of the galactic concordance. Every species recognized by the Council had representation here. The telepathic Vex with their hive consciousness, the crystalline Tauri whose bodies contained libraries of ancestral memory, the gaseous Nimbari who could process quantum calculations in nanoseconds. Everyone except humans. Until today. Professor Exalthep adjusted his ocular enhancers as he reviewed the admission file for the 1000th time. His 4 upper appendages trembled slightly, causing ripples across his iridescent exoskeleton. "This is unprecedented," he muttered to the assembly of faculty members. The Council explicitly restricted Earth from participation in interstellar affairs after the Proxima incident. Dean Ellerai, her tentacled head weaving contemplatively, gestured toward the holographic display. "The diplomatic corps insists this exception is necessary. Their reasoning is classified at levels beyond even our clearance." "She's just a juvenile," commented Professor Tizani, her feathered crest rising with concern. 17 Earth rotations old. What possible value cold? The chamber doors slid open, and conversation ceased. A slender figure stepped forward, flanked by 2 towering sentinel guards with their ceremonial staffs. The human female seemed impossibly small beside them, fragile and unassuming. She wore the standard first-year cadet uniform, adapted to her bilateral symmetry. Brown hair framed a face that betrayed no fear, only quiet determination in eyes that reflected the strange blue of her homeworld skies. "Ilara Chen," announced the lead sentinel of Earth. The silence that followed was deafening. Ilara's first weeks at Icaliadenia were a masterclass in isolation. Students from 100 worlds gave her a wide berth in corridors, whispered theories about her presence, or worse, openly discussed her presumed inadequacies as if she couldn't understand them. "Humans can't even process quaternary mathematics," a Nimbari student vaporized smugly during advanced theoretical physics. "Their brains evolved on a single planet with limited dimensionality. I heard they still experience emotions through chemical processes," giggled a young Vex. "How primitive." Ilara kept her eyes forward and her expression neutral. She had been warned about this. Earth's quarantine had spawned countless myths about humanity, most unflattering. Her very presence here was a fragile diplomatic experiment that could collapse with a single misstep. Professor Exalthep offered no relief, subjecting her to increasingly difficult examinations. "Perhaps the environment is too challenging," he suggested after her 3rd assessment. "We could arrange a modified curriculum more suited to your capabilities." Ilara met his compound eyes without flinching. "No modifications necessary, Professor. I'm still adjusting to the translation matrices for your mathematical notations. I'll improve." The professor's mandibles clicked in what might have been skepticism or amusement. "We shall see." The environmental systems catastrophe occurred during Ilara's 3rd month. She was in the xenobiology lab when the gravitational stabilizers failed throughout the Academy's western quadrant. For most species, this was inconvenient but manageable. Evolutionary adaptations, or technological augmentations, allowed them to function in variable gravity. Humans had no such advantages. Yet when the emergency response team arrived at the lab, they found Ilara methodically moving from station to station, securing volatile compounds and helping disoriented students to safety. She had fashioned crude tether points using laboratory equipment and was coordinating evacuation with remarkable efficiency. "Your species has no adaptation for zero gravity," observed Senior Medic Vrill as she treated Ilara's bruised arm afterward. "How did you manage?" Ilara shrugged. "Earth's space programs dealt with this centuries ago. It's basic emergency training. We call it thinking on your feet, though technically my feet weren't touching anything." The joke translated poorly, but something in Vrill's expression shifted. It was the first time anyone at Acaleodemia had looked at Ilara with something other than pity or contempt. It was curiosity. Professor Exalthep found himself increasingly preoccupied with the human anomaly. Her test scores remained unremarkable, yet she demonstrated problem-solving approaches that defied conventional analysis. She integrated concepts from disparate disciplines in ways that were simultaneously primitive and innovative. She lacks the Nimbari's processing speed, he confided to Dean Ellery, but creates intuitive connections they would never consider. She can't access the Tory's ancestral knowledge, yet draws from her species' collective history through what she calls cultural references. It's fascinating. Is she a security concern? The dean asked bluntly. Zalvet's ocular enhancers weird as he considered, not in the traditional sense, but she disrupts established patterns. Other students have begun emulating her methods, particularly in crisis response scenarios, and her awareness of her situation. Limited, I believe. She knows Earth is restricted, but not why. She seems to think it's about cultural contamination or technological disparities. The dean's tentacles coiled tightly. Let's keep it that way. The library archives became Ilara's sanctuary. While other students connected directly to the knowledge matrices through neural interfaces, she relied on outdated holographic displays, patiently sifting through information at human speeds. It was here that Tizani found her late one night, surrounded by historical projections of star charts. Curious choice of study, the avian professor noted, her feathers rustling softly. Most first years focus on contemporary cosmology. Ilara started, then relaxed slightly. Professor Tizani had been one of the few faculty members who treated her with basic courtesy. I'm trying to understand something, she explained, gesturing to the maps. These historical records show adjustments to restricted zones over time. Earth's solar system wasn't always isolated. Something changed approximately 300 years ago. Tizani's crest flattened momentarily. Historical cartography is hardly relevant to your curriculum. Maybe not, Ilara admitted, but understanding where I come from might help me understand why I'm here. No one sends an ambassador from a quarantined world without reason. The professor's head tilted sharply. Ambassador, is that what you believe you are? Ilara's expression revealed nothing, but her pulse quickened. She had said too much, just a figure of speech, Professor. Tizani studied her for an uncomfortable moment. Your species has an odd relationship with truth, Ilara Chen. You conceal it in plain sight and reveal it through misdirection. Perhaps that's why. She stopped abruptly. Return to your assigned studies. The past is best left undisturbed. As the professor departed, Ilara turned back to the star charts with renewed focus. The conversation had confirmed her suspicions. Humanity's isolation wasn't about protection. It was about containment. The first semester assessment trials transformed Ilara's status from curiosity to phenomenon. The challenges were designed to test not knowledge but application under pressure. While her classmates relied on evolved or augmented abilities, Ilara employed what her instructors would later describe as alarming improvisation. In the quantum relativity chamber, she reconfigured environmental controls to create a makeshift time dilation field. During the xenobiological containment scenario, she deliberately triggered a minor biohazard to neutralize a larger threat. Each solution was unorthodox, risky, and undeniably effective. Students began approaching her tentatively, first out of academic interest, then with genuine curiosity about Earth and its inhabitants. Humans, they discovered, were not the simple primitives of academy lore. They were something far more unpredictable. Professor Exalthep observed this integration with growing unease. She's becoming influential, he reported to a secure communication channel far beyond Acaleodemia's walls. The human adaptability factor is precisely as predicted. The response came after a significant delay. Continue observation. The experiment proceeds to phase 2. The true test approaches. The revelation of humanity. The beginning of Ilara's second semester coincided with rising tensions across the galactic concordance. News of border skirmishes and diplomatic breakdowns filtered through Acaliademia's carefully controlled information channels. The Academy prided itself on remaining above political conflicts, but the strain became evident as student factions formed along ancestral alliances. The Arcturian hegemony has always viewed the Treaty of Rigel as temporary, argued a towering crystalline student during diplomatic theory class. Their current military posturing is consistent with historical patterns. My people reject this characterization, countered an Arcturian representative, their chitinous exoskeleton flushing deep crimson. The Concordance forced disarmament upon us, while the Taurian alliance expanded unchecked. Professor Vosnir, a gelatinous entity whose translucent form rippled with agitation, attempted to restore order. This academic discussion has devolved into political posturing. We will resume when cooler perspectives prevail. As students filed out, conversations fragmented into heated arguments. Ilara found herself in the uncomfortable position of neutral observer. Earth held no alliances or grievances with any faction. This diplomatic no-man's land created an unexpected opportunity. Students from opposing groups found they could communicate through the human without losing face. Fascinating, remarked Zith, a Nimbari who had gradually become something approaching a friend. They use you as a communication conduit because your planet has no standing in galactic affairs. I'm not sure if that's an insult or a compliment, Ilara replied. Zith's Yasha's form shimmered with what Ilara had learned to recognize as amusement. Neither. It's an observation. Your irrelevance makes you valuable. The Collaborative Crisis Response Project was announced 3 weeks into the semester, a prestigious competition where interdisciplinary teams tackled complex scenarios without faculty intervention. Traditionally, teams formed along species lines, leveraging shared biological advantages. To everyone's surprise, Ilara found herself recruited by an elite group comprising 7 different species. Their official explanation cited experimental diversity, but unofficial campus commentary suggested a more pragmatic motive. The humans' unconventional problem-solving had proven effective in previous trials. Their assigned challenge involved a simulated planetary system on the brink of gravitational collapse. Conventional approaches focused on evacuating the populated worlds or reinforcing planetary cores, both requiring resources beyond what was provided in the simulation parameters. For 2 days, the team debated increasingly desperate solutions while simulation time ticked away. Billions of virtual lives hung in the balance as projected models showed escalating planetary instabilities. The fundamental premise is flawed, Ilara finally stated, interrupting a heated exchange. We're approaching this as a natural disaster to be mitigated. What if it's not? She manipulated the holographic display, highlighting subtle irregularities in gravitational patterns. These fluctuations aren't random. They're synchronized across multiple bodies in ways that defy natural formation. This isn't a system collapsing. It's a system being deliberately destabilized. The revelation transformed their approach. Instead of fighting the collapse, they identified the sources of artificial interference and neutralized them. The simulation stabilized with minimal intervention, preserving all major populations with a fraction of the expected resource expenditure. When the results were announced, Ilara's team claimed not just victory, but the highest efficiency rating in competition history. The achievement catapulted Ilara from curiosity to celebrity within Acaliademia's cloistered community. It also attracted unwanted attention. The Council has expressed concerns about your methods during the crisis response competition, Dean Ellerai stated, her tentacles unusually still as she addressed Ilara in her private chamber. Identifying malicious interference wasn't part of the expected solution matrix. Ilara maintained a respectful posture but felt a chill of apprehension. The evidence was present in the data, Dean Ellerai. I simply recognized the pattern. A pattern that none of your teammates, including species with vastly superior cognitive processing, identified. The Dean's multifaceted eyes narrowed. This confirms certain theories about human cognition that have concerned the Concordance for centuries. The conversation was veering into dangerous territory. Ilara chose her words carefully. I'm not sure I understand the implication. No, you wouldn't. The dean activated a secure holographic display. What do you know about Earth's quarantine, Cadet Chen? Only what I was told. After first contact 3 centuries ago, the Concordance determined that humanity wasn't ready for full integration. Our technological development and social structures required further maturation before. A convenient fiction, interrupted the dean. The truth is far more disturbing. Your species wasn't quarantined for your protection. You were contained for ours. The hologram shifted to display historical footage. First contact between humans and a Concordance delegation. The meeting appeared peaceful until alarms suddenly blared. The recording showed Concordance security personnel collapsing as their environmental systems failed simultaneously. A human delegate identified a vulnerability in our life support technology within minutes of exposure, Ellery continued. When questioned, he claimed it was obvious and seemed genuinely surprised that our engineers hadn't addressed it. Further investigation revealed 17 critical weaknesses in Concordance systems that humans identified almost instinctively. Ilara stared at the footage in confusion. I don't understand. Finding flaws is helpful, not threatening. It was the nature of the flaws, the dean explained. They weren't in the primary systems, but in the interconnections, the spaces between established protocols where vulnerabilities emerge. Most species specialize, developing deep expertise in discrete domains. Humans scan broadly, identifying patterns across disparate systems. Another image appeared, a human brain compared to neural structures of various concordant species. Your evolutionary path emphasized adaptation over specialization. You lack the Nimbari's computational speed, the Vex's collective consciousness, or the Tauri's perfect recall. Instead, you developed something far more dangerous. You see connections where none should exist. The truth landed with devastating clarity. We were quarantined because we identified weaknesses in your systems. You were quarantined because you couldn't stop yourselves from exploiting them, corrected the dean. Human history demonstrates an irrepressible drive to test boundaries, challenge systems, and reconfigure established orders. The Council determined that unrestricted human integration would destabilize the concordance within a generation. Then why am I here? Ilara demanded. Why allow any human into Acaleodemia after 3 centuries of isolation? Dean Ellery's tentacles writhed in what might have been discomfort. Because the concordance now faces a threat it cannot categorize or counter. Our specialists have failed. Our protocols have failed. The Council voted to attempt a controlled experiment. Introduce a single human into a monitored environment and observe how they interact with complex problems. Realization dawned on Ilara. The crisis response competition wasn't a simulation. It's happening somewhere right now. An entire sector is experiencing gravitational anomalies identical to your simulation. 17 worlds, billions of lives. Our best minds have found no solution. The dean's voice softened fractionally. We need the human perspective. The revelation of her true purpose spread through Acaleodemia like wildfire. Overnight, Ilara transformed from curiosity to catalyst. Students and faculty who had dismissed her now sought her perspective on seemingly unrelated challenges. The diplomatic corps dispatched senior representatives to observe her methodology. Even Professor Exalthep, long skeptical of her abilities, requested her input on research projects previously deemed beyond her comprehension. Ilara found the attention both validating and suffocating. They're not interested in me, she confided to Zith. They want to study human cognition like it's some exotic resource. Isn't it? The Nimbari's gaseous form pulsed contemplatively. Your species sees patterns mine cannot perceive. We process information faster, but you connect it in ways we would never consider. That doesn't justify 3 centuries of quarantine. Perhaps not, but it explains the fear. Zith condensed slightly, a sign of serious contemplation. Consider the implications. A species that intuitively identifies weaknesses in systems built over millennia with a historical tendency toward expansion and dominance. The concordance prioritizes stability above all else. Ilara frowned. We're not all conquerors and system breakers. No, agreed Zith, but enough of you are revolutionaries that the distinction hardly matters to species who measure change in eons rather than generations. The Galactic Concordance dispatched its most sophisticated analytical vessel to Acaleidemia 3 weeks later. The ship, a living construct of merged organic and technological systems, docked at the Academy's orbital platform with minimal ceremony. Only a select group of faculty and students were permitted to board, Ilara among them. Inside, the vessel's central chamber housed a 3-dimensional model of the affected sector, gravitational forces rendered in swirling patterns of light. Senior scientists from across the Concordance had gathered, their diverse physiologies united by expressions of grave concern. Chief Scientist Morton, a being of pure energy contained within an articulated exoskeleton, addressed the assembly. The gravitational destabilization has accelerated beyond our models. We have eliminated natural causes and external interference. The phenomenon appears self-sustaining and progressive. Professor Exalthep guided Ilara forward. The human has demonstrated relevant insights during simulated trials. Morton's energy form fluctuated skeptically. The Council's experiment. Very well. He gestured toward the model. Observer Chen, what do you perceive? Ilara studied the swirling gravitational fields, acutely aware of the attention focused on her. The patterns were familiar yet subtly different from the simulation. She circled the display, viewing it from multiple angles, before asking, "Have you ruled out internal causation?" "Explain," demanded Morton. "In our simulation, the destabilization was caused by external interference, devices placed strategically to amplify natural fluctuations." Ilara pointed to several nodes within the model. "But these patterns suggest something different. The distortions originate from within the system itself." "Impossible," declared a Tauri scientist. "We've analyzed every planetary body and spatial anomaly." "Not every body," Ilara countered. "The stars themselves." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Morton's energy form brightened with intensity. "Stars are monitored through the Concordance's stellar observation network. Any unusual activity would be cataloged immediately. Unless, Ilara suggested, the network itself is compromised." The silence that followed was profound. Ilara had just questioned the integrity of a system considered infallible, a cornerstone of Concordance scientific authority for millennia. Chief Scientist Morton's voice crackled with barely contained energy. "You suggest sabotage at a scale beyond comprehension." "I suggest verification," Ilara corrected. "Confirm the star's actual status through direct observation, not network data." Hours later, when independent probes confirmed discrepancies between observed stellar conditions and network reports, the implication sent shockwaves through the Concordance hierarchy. Somewhere within their most secure systems, an entity had been manipulating stellar data, concealing evidence of artificial stellar acceleration. Technology thought impossible yet clearly operational. As emergency protocols activated across 17 worlds, Professor Exalthep found Ilara alone, in an observation deck, watching distant evacuation vessels streaking across the starfield. "Your insight saved billions," he stated without preamble. "The Council acknowledges this debt." Ilara didn't turn from the viewport. "Will it change anything? Will Earth remain quarantined? That decision exceeds my authority." The professor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "What your presence here has proven. Educational. Perhaps the experiment will expand. More human students at Acaleidemia. Eventually. For now, a different proposition." Exalthep extended a formal diplomatic data crystal, a position with the Concordance Security Council. "Your specific cognitive profile has demonstrated value in identifying unconventional threats." Ilara accepted the crystal, its surface cool against her palm. "They're still afraid of us, aren't they?" "With reason," the professor admitted, "but fear and respect often coexist. Your species destabilizes systems, But sometimes, systems require destabilization to evolve. As Ilara contemplated the stars, she realized that her journey had never been about proving humanity's worth to an intergalactic community. It had been about forcing that community to confront its own limitations, the blind spots that developed in even the most advanced civilizations when they prioritized stability over adaptation. The quarantine had protected the Concordance from humanity's disruptive influence. Now that very disruption might be its salvation. The irony wasn't lost on her. "I accept," she said simply, her gaze still fixed on the distant stars, where Earth lay beyond reach. "On one condition. When this crisis is resolved, we discuss opening diplomatic channels with my homeworld." Professor Xalthep's compound eyes reflected the starlight. The Council anticipated this request. They are prepared to consider it. It wasn't freedom or full acceptance. It was barely even a promise. But for the first time in 3 centuries, it was possibility. A small crack in an ancient barrier, through which humanity might finally emerge into the vast, complex community of worlds that had both feared and needed them all along. In the great chambers of Acaliadinia, where the brightest minds of 17 galaxies gathered to shape the future, a human girl had changed the course of history not through superior technology or evolutionary advantage, but simply by seeing connections where others saw only chaos. It was, perhaps, the most human achievement of all.